It's now time for this week's State of Wrestling.
Yes, it is State of Wrestling time, and of course you can watch along. The video is posted exclusively for the Notsam shills at patreon.com/NotsamWrestling. If this face is one that you want to see, that is the place where you're going to want to go see it. It is time for the State of Wrestling, the top 5 stories in wrestling, according to yours truly, the last professional broadcaster, Sam Roberts. Now, this week, I'm very confident in my 5 stories. I think these are the 5 stories to cover. Story number 5 is All In. Now, we're not going to completely dissect the pay-per-view because we did that already. Yours truly and Pat Buck, we went on Patreon right after the show and did a bonus show. It's an hour and change. You can listen or watch the All In reaction show at patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. The bonus show is posted there. However, I thought about it a lot this weekend, this week, the whole time. And story number 5 is the questions that we're left asking coming out of All In. Specifically, the questions that I am left asking coming out of All In. Number 1 is what's next? There's no doubt in my mind, as successful as this show was, like let's be honest, even removed from the show, it was, I think, even more successful than I thought it would be. The show itself was this great, compelling show. And I've seen on Twitter, I don't exactly know what the argument is, but there are some people that think that the wrestling media was co-opted and that, it wasn't because, I guess the wrestling media didn't get a fair shake at getting interviews because most of the interviews went to the people that were at StarCast or something like that. I don't know. But regardless of what was happening with the wrestling media, the show was a great show. I don't think there's any denying that. There were a couple hiccups here and there, little details that could have been hammered out a little better. The timing of the show was fine, except that they ran out of time in the main event. The show felt great until 5 minutes before the show ended. You could hear somebody on the outside of the ring yelling, "We got to go home! We got to go home!" And the show literally ended just as they were going off the air. Like, there were a couple little things that you could change. But beyond that, it was a hugely successful show. I think I gave it like a 95-5 positive to negative ratio. And based on how well the All In boys were able to do pay-per-view for the very first time, there's no doubt that there will be more. The question is where? Where would you do another All In show? For me, I've heard things like Greensboro, North Carolina, which you could do. Do it around Christmas time for Starrcade, something like that. I think it's got to be after Christmas because it's already September. That's only 3 months away. I think the next when do you do the next All In? Because December is probably too soon. Maybe February? Because you can't do it in April. You can't compete with WrestleMania and Ring of Honor. The Ring of Honor New Japan show probably could have been All In 2. But instead it's a Ring of Honor New Japan show. So All In 2 can't happen in April. I would say February is the earliest it could happen. It can't happen at Madison Square Garden because Ring of Honor and New Japan have already claimed Madison Square Garden for the next show. And to do it there either before or after would lose a certain je ne sais quoi. So where do you do it? I have 2 thoughts. February, I would say either Atlanta or Los Angeles, California. And I think Los Angeles, California might be a good bet, and here's why. The next All In show needs to not only capture the wrestling fan, right? Because the first All In show did this great job of getting the wrestling community talking. The second All In show needs to go beyond the wrestling fan and start to get the attention of mainstream. If you were a wrestling fan, you couldn't go anywhere without talking about seeing, the conversation about All In followed you everywhere. But if you're not a wrestling fan, you could easily avoid it. I think the second All In needs to be something that goes beyond wrestling fandom and something that hits mainstream. I think both Atlanta and Los Angeles are places where that could happen. I think Los Angeles is the place where it could happen even easier. I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said, what do you suppose this means for WWE? I don't think this means anything for WWE. I think this means that there is more wrestling out there. I wouldn't even necessarily call it an alternative to WWE. There is additional wrestling out there. There's different wrestling out there. But, I don't buy that I don't think you're going to watch All In and be like, okay, well, now I got my wrestling fill. There's no wrestling fill. Wrestling fans just want to watch wrestling. If the All In Boys put together a television show every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., then that is walking on WWE's territory. If they were running pay-per-views the same night, if they were running towns that were nearby, then there would be competition. But nobody's watching All In instead of Hell in a Cell. Nobody's watching All In instead of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. They're watching it in addition to, which I think is important to note, that if anything, All In has the potential to get people who weren't necessarily interested in wrestling back interested in wrestling because it's so unique and fun. And if that happens, people are not going to be satisfied with just one show. They're going to want to go beyond that. And when they want to go beyond that, where are they going to go? To WWE. I think that there is a version of this where if the All-In model continues and those guys keep doing shows, it actually shows a net positive for WWE. So I don't think WWE is in trouble. The question is, if Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks realize that they do not need an organization to promote the shows that they're on, if Marty Scurll and Adam Page say, okay, all of us together, the Elite, we can just run shows as the Elite. We can have guys that work for us that run these shows, but what if we could do shows that were based on the talent that was at the shows instead of the organization where the talent works? We had Joey Janela on the show this week. What if, he promotes his own shows. They're in conjunction with GCW, but Joey Janela's Spring Break. You go to Joey Janela's Spring Break because you're a Joey Janela fan and you trust the product that he's going to put out there based on his matches. You now trust Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks and Marty Scurll and Adam Page. You trust the Elite. You trust Kenny Omega. You know what I mean? When you put these guys on a show, you don't necessarily need an organization, which leads me to say that ultimately, All In could be more trouble for Ring of Honor than it is for WWE. And here's why. Ring of Honor, in the last year or so, has made it clear that they are the American territory where you can find the Elite. They are the American territory where you can find the Bullet Club. Their partnership with New Japan has done big things for Ring of Honor. But that is the basket they've put their eggs in. They've got a handful of guys. Dalton Castle is injured. They've got Punishment Martinez. They've got Jay Lethal, of course. The Briscoe brothers are still doing their thing. But in reality, in terms of building the biggest stars in Ring of Honor, nobody is coming close to Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, to Marty Scurll, even to Adam Page, due to his association with the Elite. If Ring of Honor were to lose the Elite and the Bullet Club, what does Ring of Honor have left? Does Ring of Honor have enough left after the Elite is gone to put on content that is as compelling? I would say no. I would say that because Ring of Honor has concentrated their shows around main events like Cody Rhodes versus Kenny Omega, around the Young Bucks being there, around all of this stuff, that if the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and Marty Scurll and the Elite, if they stop doing Ring of Honor shows because they just want to do their own shows, well, I think their own shows are going to outdraw Ring of Honor. As a matter of fact, I don't know if Ring of Honor is going to be able to stay in business without these guys, because these guys are the guys that they've put 100% of their stock into. So I think that Ring of Honor needs to be very, very careful, because Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, the Elite are setting themselves up in a position where they're the ones with all the chips. What's that? They have all the power, right? Because they don't need an organization, but the organization needs them, and that's going to leave the organization in trouble. So that was my thought, that if any, and maybe it'll be a net positive for everybody involved. I'm not trying to be negative, but if any organization is in trouble due to All In, especially long term, I think it's not WWE. And if it's anyone, I think it could be Ring of Honor. Time will tell. We will see. But that's what left me thinking. As I said, you can listen to the All In wrap-up show over on the Patreon page, patreon.com/NotSamWrestling. Story number 4 is tag teams on Raw. Raw seems to have completely restructured their tag team division. On Raw this week, we saw Bobby Roode and Chad Gable as a team together for the first time. We saw a new tag team champion, which is the team. By the way, I always say tag team champion. I think it's odd when people say the tag team championships are on the line. It's one championship represented by 2 belts. In my head, Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler have the tag team championship, not tag team championships. It's the championship, and it's represented by those 2 title belts, right? That's the way I see it. So Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, high profile, by the way, tag team champions, but they're both champions. That's why you would say champions, if that makes, I think. I'm working on my championship grammar. Now, I think that the reason that Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre are the champions is because they want to make the Shield versus Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre into an even bigger deal. I mean, think about it. All the titles on Raw now, all the men's titles anyway, are associated with that show, that program. Seth is the Intercontinental Champion. Roman, the Universal Champion. Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, tag team champions. That's the biggest storyline on Raw now based on titles. But still, new tag team champions, new tag team, Chad Gable and Bobby Roode, and a fresh start for the Authors of Pain with, I keep wanting to say Rockstar Spud as their manager. Maverick, whatever his name is. Rockstar Spud as their manager. So, Drake as their manager. So, I guess we'll start with the tag team champions, as I said. I mean, I don't know what's more to say about that. I think that it is a good choice. The B team is super fun, but I get why they're doing what they're doing. I think this move makes Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre into an even bigger team, and it makes the tag team championship more important because now it's being placed on men that are involved in the main event of the story. So I think everybody is heightened and everything is heightened because of that move. So I think that that's the right move. Now, the Authors of Pain, I'm confused as to why Drake is wearing the Authors of Pain gear. I think it's a funny visual for sure. I hope that they expand that role. I think we were left with more questions than answers after we saw that union formed on Monday Night Raw this week, but that might have been by design. Hopefully over the weeks we will get our questions answered, but anything that is going to make the Authors of Pain into a dominant team, I am for. I think that maybe the reason why they haven't done as well as one would have hoped since they got to the main roster, maybe it's because they didn't have Paul Ellering anymore for whatever reason, and their mic skills were not great. Something happened with the Authors of Pain where they lost the trust of the people who are decision makers. That's very, very clear if you watch the show, but it would appear, based on their dominant performance, that there is a trust in the Authors of Pain when they have a proper manager with them. And I think that Spud is a great, great manager. So I like the pairing. I'm not sure about the gear yet. I will let you know next week what I think about the gear. The last shakeup in the teams was Chad Gable and Bobby Roode as a tag team. Now, here's what I'm thinking. I thought they were fun together. I liked them doing the Glorious thing. The entrance was good. I think it's good news for Chad Gable in the sense that he's getting some spotlight on him. I believe I've read on the internet that Jason Jordan is either ready or close to ready to coming back to Raw. Now the question is, what is he going to do? Of course, Chad Gable and Jason Jordan have a history together. I think we should have Jason Jordan come back and just come out one night and interfere in a match featuring Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, leading people to believe that he's going to join them. But then Jason Jordan and Bobby Roode turn on Chad Gable. That's what I would do. I think desperately Bobby Roode needs to be a heel. I think he could be a great heel. I think he could be a top heel. And I think that this is a good way to get him there. I think that Chad Gable, there's a lot of love for him. Same way, with Becky Lynch, obviously. I think if you turn Chad Gable heel, you would risk people cheering for him. Because I think on some level, people believe that Chad Gable has all this potential that has not even come close to being realized. I'm not sure why the American Alpha were never really utilized as a proper tag team on SmackDown. But I do think that we should be given a few weeks to really get to love Bobby Roode and Chad Gable before Bobby Roode turns on him, and heel Bobby Roode alongside bad guy Jason Jordan becomes a tag team of their own. Eventually, Kurt Angle can return. What are you doing, son? They lay out Kurt Angle. We end up with Chad Gable and Kurt Angle versus Jason Jordan and Bobby Roode. That's where I would go with this thing. I saw it as full of potential. Some people might have seen it and said, oh, that's just a throwaway thing. That's something they're trying. No. We look at everything for the potential that it has, okay? Jason Jordan comes back. Chad Gable thinks that they're friends. Beats up Chad Gable. Bobby Roode beats up Chad Gable as well. Jason Jordan and Bobby Roode are a bad guy tag team. Kurt Angle says, what are you doing? Jason Jordan beats up his dad. Bobby Roode helps him. They do some kind of dual finisher to him. Before they can pull off the dual finisher, here comes Chad Gable to help Kurt Angle. Who doesn't want to see a Kurt Angle? If Kurt Angle's going to return for another match, who doesn't want to see a Chad Gable-Kurt Angle team? Now, I think there is a version of this that you can stretch this out until WrestleMania, maybe. But realistically, I think this is probably a Survivor Series match. I think that this is a match for Survivor Series. And then maybe if Kurt Angle's going to have another WrestleMania match, you give him Jason Jordan singles, father versus son. But do the tag match at Survivor Series. Money to me, I think it's a good idea. Number 3, speaking of tag team matches, mixed match tag coming back for a season 2. I think this is good news. I don't know if you guys watched Mixed Match Tag, but I thought it was a good show. And the reason why I thought it was a good show is because it didn't rely heavily on storyline. It almost existed into a universe on its own. Mixed Match Tag was about as close as you'll get to seeing people behave kind of like they do at live events. On Mixed Match Tag, it really felt like the superstars were having fun. It was just about the match and having fun. The little storylines that were happening throughout were really just kind of a goof and kind of having fun with the way the fans reacted to things. Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss ended up stealing the show. Miz and Asuka is just a great team. I hope they win again, although Asuka is no longer undefeated, so that's certainly not a given. We saw Carmella and R-Truth on SmackDown. So that right there is a commercial for how good mixed match can be. And by the way, leave it to R-Truth. Now, people were saying R-Truth is the greatest because he got himself on SmackDown in the main event. After all these years, R-Truth is still performing at this level. Not only is he performing at this level, not only was he in the main event of SmackDown, but R-Truth turned Carmella babyface without you even realizing it. Carmella's a good guy now. Carmella has embraced teaming with R-Truth. Everybody loves R-Truth. Carmella hates what Maurice said about her. Maurice is a bad guy. Everybody hates her. R-Truth just turned Carmella babyface right under our noses. And we're accepting it, which is tough because Carmella was really established as a bad guy. So the idea that she could now turn around and be a good guy, that's a difficult thing to pull off. Who can pull that off? R-Truth. I'm excited about Mixed Match. I think that you should go out of your way. If you haven't seen it yet, go on the WWE Network and check out the last season. I think this is going to be a fun season, fun thing to watch on Facebook. See the performers just going out there and having a good time, wrestling good matches, and these tandems that normally wouldn't happen. You know, as I said, Braun and Alexa, as you know, husband and wives teaming up all over the place. I think it's good. I think it's going to be good. We'll see what Bobby Lashley and Sasha Banks do together. Hopefully dominate. You know, maybe we'll see another side of Lashley. Lashley's been doing some weird stuff. Lashley being ready to sing with Elias, and it cost him. Being ready to perform yoga with Jinder, and it cost him. So, you know, I hopefully he'll stop letting bad guys convince him to do things, because every time he does, he ends up getting jumped. But clearly there's a side of Bobby Lashley that likes to entertain people, and that's the side that I'd like to see at Mixed Match Challenge. We move on to story number 2, and that is a checkup on Braun Strowman's heel turn. Now, it's official. I'll tell you, I do like that they're not playing the in-between game. You know, I do like, and I saw in the Discord room, somebody said something about maybe this is shades of gray, Braun just doing what needs to be done. No, Braun Strowman is going on a full personality change. I don't like how completely different it is. I don't like that 3 weeks ago, he said, I'm a stand-up guy and blah, 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 blah. And 2 weeks later, he's doing a promo in front of an audience that says he doesn't care, he doesn't give a damn about any of them. Like, he went from stereotypical good guy to stereotypical bad guy over the course of 3 weeks without having a real reason. Like, Roman Reigns spent months complaining that he was getting screwed out of title matches, and he never turned heel. Braun Strowman is complaining about getting screwed out of title matches and getting jumped, which is happening. And now all of a sudden he's a full heel. You know, I'm not. The road to get here is flawed. But I respect that Braun Strowman is going full heel. Now, clearly, they're really trying to establish this. I thought that the beginning of Raw probably should have looked a little more like the end of Raw. You know, I don't understand why Finn Balor, for instance, would be coming out trying to separate the Shield and Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre. And you might say, well, that's because, you know, he was instructed to by the acting Raw general manager. And I'd respond to you and say, you mean his arch rival, Baron Corbin? So he just listens to him for the first segment and then challenges him to a match in the second segment? I didn't know why the good guys were out there trying to separate this fight, except maybe to just make it seem like it wasn't a biased thing. But I liked the end of Raw. I thought it was a fun end to Raw where you had all the bad guys out there. It reminded me of Royal Rumble 94, when every bad guy is piling up on top of the casket that The Undertaker has been thrown into by Yokozuna. And it just is like, yeah, these are all the bad guys. And of course the bad guys get along because they break the rules. They understand each other. They all want to stop the good guys. That doesn't bother me. It certainly makes the Shield look like good guys. But here's what I want to happen. Next week on Raw, I want the Shield to just start kind of invisibly tearing through the locker room. I want, like, opening segment, somebody's supposed to come out. He's getting called out by Baron Corbin or whoever. And he can't make it out, and then we see him laid out backstage. And throughout the show, the heels are just getting laid out and are not responding to what they're supposed to be responding to, only to find out that it is in actuality the Shield getting their revenge against everybody who came out and attacked him. And that means attacking Kevin Owens, and that means attacking, who knew how evil Drew Gulak was? That's how I knew that the Shield were supreme good guys. Because supreme bad guy Drew Gulak was getting in Roman Reigns' face. I tell you, right under our noses, very low key, Drew Gulak is becoming one of the top heels in WWE. without telling a soul about it. Why was he at Raw? 205 Live is taped on Tuesdays. Why was he at Raw? Because he's a bad guy. Because he's a bad guy. And when you need a bad guy to come out and stop a good guy, he's the one who's going to do it. Good for Drew Gulak. I like that anybody who's on 205 Live is that established in their character. He is a heel. He is a bad guy. He wants to win the Cruiserweight title. He wants to stop the Shield because he's evil. Bad guy. Bad dude. So yeah, that's what I thought, I mean, we'll see how it goes. They did do what I hoped that they would do and presented the Shield this week like a unified front. I think that that's going to help people cheer for the Shield and completely established. 2 weeks ago, we were sitting here wondering if the Shield were good guys or bad guys based on what they did to Braun Strowman. We know exactly the role that everybody is in coming off of Monday Night Raw. And speaking of Monday Night Raw, we go to our number one story. What was the subtext of that Shawn Michaels and Undertaker segment on Monday Night Raw? Now, first of all, I thought it was a great segment. I wasn't entirely sure of it. Shawn Michaels was out there, and he was okay when Shawn was by himself. But once The Undertaker came out there, first of all, that Undertaker entrance, and I tweeted about it, will do it to me every single time. There may be nothing better in wrestling, no singular entity better than the entrance of The Undertaker. The glass shattering for Stone Cold is amazing. The bam, 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 for Hogan, awesome. Lots of great stuff. I think that The Undertaker's entrance would just never be beaten in terms of attractions to go to a wrestling show. There's just nothing like The Undertaker's entrance. I was trying to it's The Undertaker, let me roll my eyes. Couldn't do it. Goosebumps riding up and down my arms when The Undertaker came out, and I didn't expect it, and they gave it to me anyway. I thought The Undertaker's promo was super strong. I thought Shawn Michaels turned into a much better performer when The Undertaker was out there. And maybe that's because that's when he was performing, right? And I think that Shawn Michaels, before The Undertaker came out, was just kind of shooting the breeze a little bit. Once The Undertaker came out, that's when things got serious. And that's when you realize, Shawn knows what he's doing. Shawn Michaels can come out and shoot the breeze. But when it's time to get serious, Shawn gets serious. Now, the question is, were they hinting at a Shawn Michaels-Undertaker match? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I don't even think it was intentional that would be in people's heads. Because if it was intentional, it wouldn't be very effective at what they were going for. I think they were trying to take a moment to remind everybody of how badass The Undertaker is. They were trying to take a moment to remind everybody that The Undertaker is an unbeatable force, and he's the one that destroyed Shawn Michaels' career. But if that segment were about planting the seeds for a Shawn Michaels-Undertaker match, I think that if that was the intention, then the intention ran the risk of distracting from the real purpose of the segment, and that was to promote the Triple H-Undertaker match at Super Showdown. At the end of the day, that's what that was about. And quite frankly, as much as I would like to see a Shawn Michaels-Undertaker match again, I would far prefer, if Shawn was going to come back once, I would far prefer to see Shawn Michaels versus Tommaso Ciampa at NXT TakeOver than I would Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, although you wouldn't catch me complaining about Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. I just don't think it's going to happen, and I personally don't think that that was the purpose of that segment. I don't think that the purpose of that segment was now, intention versus result are two different things. I think people left that segment wanting a Shawn Michaels-Undertaker match. And I don't think that that was intentional because it doesn't make any sense for it to be intentional because that's not what is being offered. What is being offered is a Triple H Undertaker match. I'm anxious to see what Triple H does on Monday Night Raw next week. It's really fun the way they've been building up this match and watching them simultaneously promote Super Showdown and Hell in a Cell and Evolution. Now, I think right now, the way I would rank them in terms of promotion is Super Showdown, then Evolution, then Hell in a Cell. Problem is, Hell in a Cell is coming before either of those two shows. So, I don't know if that is going to be a fault, if it's going to make it so that people are less interested than in Hell in a Cell. I think on Raw, Hell in a Cell is being treated like a third show. And on SmackDown, Hell in a Cell is being treated like a main show. SmackDown, they're concentrating on the mixed tag with Miz and Maurice and Bryan and Brie. They're talking about Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton. They've got all this stuff. Whereas on Raw, I'm pretty sure the only match that we have is the Hell in a Cell Universal Championship match, which I'm sure that we will start hyping up more next week when the Shield is standing on their 2 feet again. But in the meantime, watching Raw, I'm far more excited about and knowledgeable of Super Showdown and Evolution. But, we still got some time, folks. We still got some time. That's going to do it for this week's Not Sam Wrestling. I appreciate you all being here. Don't forget to check out patreon.com/NotSamWrestling and see if you want to become a Not Sam shill. I hope that you do. Either way, we will see you next week right here on Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, a.k.a. Not Sam Wrestling. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Follow at Not Sam on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Rate, review, and subscribe. This has been Not Sam Wrestling. Not Sam Wrestling.